Well, I'm actually, what I'm going to do in terms of demos tonight is actually pretty simplistic, kind of trying to, if you haven't looked at Virtual Earth and the API, well, particularly the API that lets you do certain things, kind of like to do a few simple things to help you get started in applying this technology. Unfortunately, I kind of like wandering around the room, but due to the fact that I don't have a clicker mouse or anything like that, and I do have some demos, I'm going to have to stand up there, which seems kind of beyond the point, but we'll give that a try anyway. And I promise not to go on and on and on and kind of take the whole hour. And if you have questions, by all means ask them. If you have comments, that's fine too. If not, then we'll get through this. And hopefully, and my goal is really, I love maps. I enjoy working with maps. At one point in time in my life, I thought, gee, I'd like to start a map store. How silly that seems today, doesn't it? But when first Google Earth and, of course, Google Maps, but Google Earth and Microsoft Virtual Earth came out, I started drooling. It was just, I never traveled much when I was growing up, and maps represented my way of virtually going to different places in the world, to be able to imagine myself there and to take virtual vacations and to do virtual travel. Now, of course, today's technology makes that a whole lot easier. You might want to ask the question, why did I choose Virtual Earth to be able to start playing around with and to give you a talk here versus Google Earth, which I like just as much for different reasons. And really the answer is I personally find, there's no religious war between Microsoft and Google as far as I'm concerned. My goal was to, I found Virtual Earth more accessible from a programmatic standpoint because Microsoft has the API out there and the SDK out there, and it seemed and I didn't even have to sign up for anything like I did with Google Earth in order to get access to the API. So for me, Virtual Earth was just more accessible and easier to work with within the context of Visual Studio. So I'd like to, in doing this, I'd just like to give you a few minutes of background and go through some simple examples as to how to jumpstart what you can do. You can do some pretty interesting things with a very minimal amount of code within Virtual Earth. And so I'd like to kind of whet your appetite by showing you a few of those things. So I'll really talk, I'll keep the talk, my background slides and all that to just really a few minutes, and should be able to I hope communicate, first of all, my excitement and enthusiasm for geographic mashups. I think the one thing that paper maps and then even later Yahoo Maps and Google Maps and things like that, the mapping applications we had available to us, the one thing that they were lacking is that we as individuals always want different things from the standpoint of our maps. I might want to know where the local bars are here in Las Vegas, where the shows are, something like that. You might want to know what kind of tours can you take in Las Vegas. You might, on the other hand, if you're like me, you might want to just figure out what's the quickest way out of this town. Las Vegas is not my idea of a vacation or necessarily a destination that I like to spend a whole lot of time at. So I just like to know what's the fastest way out of town. Anyway, a little bit about my background. I'm editor-in-chief of FTP Online right now for Fawcett Technical Publications. I have my own technology consulting company that I have given the mouthful title of Technology Strategy Research, LLC. Former professor of computer science and mathematics, and I've been a longtime writer and speaker on various technology topics. Have my website at petervarhol.com, and if you want to email me, you can email me. I didn't put an email address on here. I'm pvarhol@fawcett.com, or probably easier to remember, peter@petervarhol.com. So about 12, 13 years ago, I did some work for a company called Terralogics. Terralogics is no longer in business. They got acquired by somebody or other back in the 96, 97 or thereabouts. But about 12, 13 years ago, I was doing some work for them, and I was chatting with the CEO of the company, and he told me a very interesting story. He said that we see a progression in where the value of computing lies. Now, I, at this time, and still live in the Boston area. I actually live in southern New Hampshire. So, a very coarse, the mini-computer center of the world. Wang, Digital Equipment Corporation, Stratus Computer, Prime Computer, places like that. So this fellow told me that he said the 80s, in the 1980s, the value of computing was primarily in the hardware. Hardware engineers at that point in time were paid more than software engineers. The hardware was able to command a premium price. And of course, if you look back before that in the late 60s and into the 70s, with IBM and some of the other mainframe vendors, they actually gave away the software as long as you would buy their mainframe hardware. So the decade of the 80s, he told me, was the decade where the value in computing was found within hardware. That, by the time that we had this discussion, had already been rapidly changing. The value of computing was no longer so much in the hardware at the point in time where the prices for hardware started to decline rather dramatically. Wang was already in Chapter 11. Digital, I don't think, ever went into Chapter 11, but they were certainly well into decline at that point in time. Prime Computer was gone. Stratus Computer still around these days, but certainly not the force it was at that particular time. So we saw a dramatic decline in the value in computing being in the hardware, and he said it's now in the software. He said, but that's not going to last either. We can charge for software a lot more than we had in the past in the 1990s. He said that's not going to last. There's going to be another phase where we're going to see the value in software dramatically decline, just as we see the value in hardware dramatically decline. Well, I believe we've reached a point where the value in software has begun to decline rather rapidly. And what brought that on? Open source. Now the value in software, the gain, the monetary gain that we see that's available in software, the software itself is trending towards zero. And we're seeing other things that are of value. His contention was that the next era of value in computing would be in the data. That the data itself would become very, very valuable. And I think we are seeing that stage somewhat today, but a very strange thing is happening today. The companies that seem to be succeeding most in monetizing the value of the data are giving it away. Google is giving it away. Imagine a world where to do a Google search, you had to pay. You had to give them your credit card number in order to do a Google search. imagine a world where in order to use the Wikipedia, you had to buy a subscription. So clearly there's data out there, but those who are monetizing the value of data are sharing it actually. And where then is the value? The value is not, I think, in the data itself, but it's coming from combining that data in unique and very personal ways. And I think that mashups are enabling us to do that. So what mashups are doing literally is that they're enabling us to combine that content, the data, from multiple sources into an integrated experience. In the case of maps, I no longer have to take a look at that map and say, gee, I wonder where such and such is. I wonder what's the best route to get from where I am to where I want to be and things like that. I can now pull in data in order to enable that to happen. The applications that we have, the packaged applications, the web applications, do some of that, but the applications that we have tend to pigeonhole that data. I have a particular, as an application developer, a particular vision of what I want that application to give my user. And if you try to stray beyond that vision, the application typically isn't very good at it. So mashups enable us to get to new and innovative uses within that data. As I mentioned, our needs are unique and very personal with regards to mapping data. So how can we meet those needs? We can start with one of the available mapping applications. As I said, I happen to use Virtual Earth. I'm not religious about it. Google Earth and Google Maps provide a similar sort of API. We can add location data. We can add data that defines certain attributes of those locations based on what, in fact, our user wants to know. Our user is not millions of people out there. Our user may actually, in the case of a mashup, be a small group as a few hundred people and can still get a great deal of value out of a unique combination of that data. One of the first successful geographic mashups was called ChicagoCrime.org. And what do you think ChicagoCrime.org did? It simply took up-to-date crime statistics and mapped them onto Google Maps. So anybody living within the Chicago area could see crime statistics within their area, within other areas that they might be thinking of moving into and things like that. Now think about how you can expand on that. You might be able to look at the quality of schools in a particular area, the average property value, and the average property tax in a particular area. You might want to look at your distance, if you're considering buying a home, the distance from a police station, a fire station, from various public services, from shopping, from anything that you, from restaurants, from anything that you might actually be interested in. And this data is going to be useful to a wide variety of people. But the thing is that it's not going to be a mass market application because you're targeting people within a specific geographic area. So much better to provide their ability to get the information that they want and enable them, provide them a path to either easily get the information they want or provide the ability to easily create a mashup to give that small segment of the population just the data that they want. With regards to Virtual Earth, the web service for mapping is this is part of Microsoft Live. So the main site is at local.live.com. The SDK is also online. The SDK is really more of a collection of examples. You actually call the mapping, the map object control or the map control object, at dev.virtualearth.net. This is still considered in beta, and I thought that, I think it was Jesse James Garrett this morning made a very interesting point with regards to web applications, rich internet applications, and beta. Does anybody remember what it is? He said something about infinite beta. Remember that? That's, for an IT guy, that's a little bit scary. But for somebody whose needs change rapidly over time, for small groups of individuals who might have diverse needs, the idea that something is in infinite beta may make a kind of sense, and that is you rev it quickly, you don't actually, you publish it for use, but you also recognize that this is going to change rather rapidly over a short period of time. Virtual Earth itself is accessible through web scripting and ASP.NET, and as I pointed out, it's a part of Windows Live. Within your script, the first thing you have to do is make a reference to the Virtual Earth map control within the header of the script, and I do so right here. You point to dev.virtualearth.net/map control, the particular version. I happen to be using the latest version. I think they're up to 3.1 now. I think I'm actually referencing version 3 here because I did this a few weeks ago because they're in infinite beta. And you add a div element within the context of the page in order to contain the map. I'd like to point out something about this div element in that may make a little bit of sense. You see, I actually define the parameters of the map. I say the width is 400 pixels and the height is 400 pixels. First of all, note that I'm working in pixels. I can also work in inches, centimeters, and I think there are 2 or 3 other different standards of measure that you can apply here. The other thing is, of course, you can put variables in there. You can adjust that for the confines of the particular web browser that you're using also. To create a simple map, all you need is to create a new instance of the Virtual Earth map object and then call the load map function. So I've got a couple of things here. First of all, I define the variable map as a new Virtual Earth map object, and then I define I call the method load map on that particular map, and that provides the default map. I have an example that's kind of a static example. I'm going to go ahead and do that right now within Visual Studio. So I have the basic map here, the code for the basic map. You probably can't see that. I don't know that it's necessary to see. I actually have that code on another page, so on the next page of the presentation. So we'll take a look at it at that time, but I'll actually just go ahead and execute that page right now. I'm going out to the web right now and calling an instance of the Virtual Earth map. So that's the basic map. That's the default map right there, centered on the center of the United States. As I pointed out, 400 pixels by 400 pixels. You can use different standards of measure, or you can use variables to adjust to the parameters of the screen that you're working with. So going back to the presentation, I'll go ahead and show you the code. That's, I think, a little bit easier to read than the code right there. So you see I have my reference to dev.virtualearth.net, the map control. Define the function getMap, where I create a new instance of the map and then reference the load map method. And then down at the bottom, I just go ahead, I have my div item there, and then I just go ahead and call the map. I call the function getMap, which goes ahead and creates the instance and defines the map. So very simple to bring up a basic map. To do some other slightly more interesting things is not a whole lot more difficult either. It's not a whole lot more code. For example, I can go and mark individual locations using pushpins. I can use as many pushpins as I want. I can have hundreds or even thousands of pushpins on a particular map. I can also fill in labels for those pushpins programmatically. And I'll give you an example here. First of all, I'll go ahead and create a variable with a pin ID of 1 and then define a pushpin, or excuse me, a pin object based on a new virtual Earth pushpin instance. I go ahead and a couple of things about this code. You see, I actually go and define the location by the latitude and longitude in this case. It need not be the latitude and longitude. It can be a street address. It can be a location address if virtual Earth cannot reference that particular location. I'll show you an example of that in another couple of minutes. But I go ahead and I define the location based on the latitude and longitude of the map. And then I also define, you see, the label. The last item in that structure is the label that goes ahead on the map. The label is simply, this is my house. Once again, I can actually make a variable out of that so that the label can be dynamic based on what I'm calling. I'll have an example of that here too in just a minute. So I'll go ahead with this code in which I do exactly what I had on the slide. And I'll go ahead and execute that. Calling out to the virtual Earth control. And I put a push pin at that particular latitude and longitude that represents, if I go ahead and hover over the push pin, this is my house. My house is at that location. Once again, any number of push pins, any number of labels that I happen to be able to want to define. The code to do that, just really a couple lines, just being able to define that structure and call that structure. And I think I have the code on the next slide too. Well, actually, I have new code on the next slide. So the one thing that I wanted to show you on this particular one, if you could see it, is that I just go ahead and call the add pushpin method on my new instance of the map. Yeah. Yes. This is defining my latitude and longitude, and oh, you mean on where I'm calling load map. Latitude and longitude. This defines this particular number defines the zoom. I heard somebody say it. That's the amount of zoom. I think that goes from like 1 to 19, where each successfully larger number is a higher level of zoom. Thanks for pointing that out. This particular piece of code enables me. Oh, I actually have another one here that I can show. It's another push pin. It centers puts the push pin in the center of the map. So let's go ahead and take a look at this one also. So it actually, now where's my push pin? Oh, there we go. So I add a push pin to the center of the map, and it goes ahead and centers on that location, and then I can click on there to add the push pin. So the other thing you might be interested in doing is mapping a route from one location to the other. Your user might want to say, how do I get from where I am to where I want to be? In this case, I'm saying through the get route oh, let me go back there. Let me actually kick out of that. Through the get route method on my instance of the map, I'm saying, how can I get from, in this case, the location of my home in Nashua, New Hampshire, to the airport that I use, Manchester Airport. I do that, and Virtual Earth will go ahead and map that out for me. Let me show you that. Okay, so what I've done is, and of course I can ask this, I could put variables there and ask for the user input. Where do you want to, where are you, where do you want to go to? Where do you want to go from? Where do you want to go to? In this case, it goes ahead and maps it out, and at each location, it tells me precisely what I want to do. So it actually, Virtual Earth, the map control will actually fill in the labels on the directions here, so I get them dynamically. Turn right onto Peel Road, turn right onto East Dunstable Road, turn left onto Timberline Drive, take the ramp onto US 3 Everett Turnpike North, and so on up the various steps until I get to the end, arrive at Manchester Airport. So once again, just a few lines of code. Yes? You certainly can. You can add anything you want to the labels, yeah. So it makes it an extremely easy method of enabling you to personalize a map. I have one more example here. I don't think I talk about it in my slides, but let me go ahead and execute this one also. This one asks, where do you want to go? Where do you want the map to be able to, what do you want the map to find? And let's say Las Vegas. It's going to come back and say, well, first of all, it's going to center on the most common Las Vegas, but it's also going to say there are a number of different places called Las Vegas, Nevada, Las Vegas, New Mexico, Las Vegas, Mexico, Las Vegas, Puerto Rico. So let's say, in this case, I already see Las Vegas, Nevada, so I can choose Las Vegas, Nevada, and I already happen to be there. Let's say that I don't want Las Vegas, Nevada. Let's say I want Las Vegas, New Mexico. I can click on it down here, or I can click on it up here. Go ahead and click on it there. And instead of Las Vegas, Nevada, I'm taken to Las Vegas, New Mexico. I can do the same thing. Take me to Nashua, New Hampshire. It's still going to ask me, more than one location wasn't returned, but it's still going to say center on Nashua, New Hampshire. And I'm already there, so it's going to keep me at Nashua, New Hampshire. I can put any location in there. Once again, let me go ahead and close out of that, and let's look at the, I closed out of Visual Studio too. I'll bring Visual Studio back. And open that up once again. What I want to point out there is, once again, how particularly easy this was to go ahead and do. And I actually put the more than one location was returned, even if only one location was returned. You can actually count the number of locations that was returned and do an if there, which I didn't happen to do. But literally, my code was simply the find location method off the instance of the map where I go ahead and use a variable. I capture the text in the text box, and I look at that, and I go ahead by calling find location, I look at what comes back. Once again, just a couple of lines of code. And that's an example of the location. One of the ways that I've been using this for Fawcett Technical Publications is rather an obvious one. We have conferences all over the country, sometimes all over the world. We've had them in Toronto, Canada. We've had them in Sydney, Australia. And we've had them in other worldwide locations also. The participants in these conferences, myself, you folks, and so on, require a variety of different information. The venue, hotel information, travel information, perhaps things to do, sights to see within the city. Perhaps you might want to also bring up the conference schedule as you're looking at perhaps flight information getting into and out of the city. The information needs to be personalized for each participant. The participant has to be able to get access to the unique information that he or she wants. So one of the things that I have been doing is most of that data is already available on Virtual Earth. I can search for hotels, I can search for restaurants and other places of interest. I can pull information via, usually the easiest method is if they offer an RSS feed. But the data is usually serialized is often serialized, I should say, in some ways off of many of these sites. LasVegas.com is one place that I've been able to pull serialized information off of. Getting it serialized can be difficult. Ideally, an RSS feed is probably the easiest way to get that information. And unfortunately, I did not bring an example of a coded example, this particular one that I've worked with Fawcett Technical Publications, but in this case, I have a slide with the venues, shopping experiences, the airport, and if you bring up, for example, the information bar in the airport, it says, oh, by the way, we offer special deals through United Airlines, call this number if you want to fly United. So we're starting to, and this has been going out in our newsletters where we publicize these conferences. So we're starting to provide some personalized information, the ability to get personalized information about the geographic area of some of the places that we're having conferences. Word about the UI design. I really enjoyed Jesse James Garrett's talk this morning because he talked all about the user experience, and he gave some very good points concerning the user perspective on looking at rich internet applications and AJAX applications. I'd just like to point out that the coding of this is pretty easy. The most difficult aspect of it is how to figure out how to present the geographic information so that it's most meaningful to the user. Just as an example here, I think the master of this is a gentleman by the name of Edward Tufte. Any of you ever heard of Edward Tufte? He's a researcher I think he's Professor Emeritus right now from Yale University and has published a wide variety of books, visual explanations, envisioning information, the visual display of quantitative information. A couple of the points that he tries to bring out in some of the stories that in some of the classes that he still teaches commercially is use your data to tell a story. Be able to communicate a particular image or a particular story to the user through your use of the data. And also, whenever possible, visualize the data. And I was especially taken by Jesse Garrett's example this morning where he said, well, I've got data here and it looks like it's in a spreadsheet and it's just looks like a bunch of numbers. We can add a X and Y axis to it and we can add some labels and it starts to make a little bit more sense. This is rainfall data. But if we really want to tell the story of how much rainfall someone can expect at the particular location that he gave the example from, we can really represent this in another way. And he did it through a series of raindrops, where the darkest raindrop, the darkest and largest raindrop represented the most amount of rain at that particular time, and the very light, the very small raindrop represented the least amount of rain. So there's no right or wrong answer. There's no one single answer, I should say, to be able to represent the data. Just some guidelines on how you can go about telling a story with that data. So just to summarize, geographic mashups are valuable in many, many contexts. I happen to be working on them for working with our conferences group here at Fawcett Technical Publications. The Virtual Earth API makes it easy in just a few lines of code to begin to start creating your geographic mashups. Data serialization from a variety of sites represents an ongoing issue. I was talking to somebody who was doing geographic mashups who told me, yes, sometimes you just need to screen scrape the data off a particular web page, which I would prefer not doing, but I think in certain circumstances that may be the only way you can get the data you want. And last of all, the UI design can make or break your application. So with that in mind, I don't know about you folks. I'm actually on a red-eye back to New Hampshire tonight. And so I wanted to leave you with this thought. I have a bottle of shampoo, and I'm not afraid to use it. So are there any questions? Yes, sir. There is, yes. I have not yet experimented with coding that, but yes, you can absolutely programmatically switch that into the 3D mode. All the other calls are the same, that's correct. One of the things that I've discovered is that I started playing around with the 3D mode just like a couple weeks ago, and I noticed I saw somebody had commented in some article that, well, the nice thing about Microsoft is that they don't put advertising on the map page. And I'm thinking, you know, I brought up the 3D of Boston just with one of my first playing around with it. And guess what? Right there in the middle, there's a advertisement. You know, looked like a billboard in the 3D environment, you know, for realestate.com. So yes, they are doing advertising, and that. We had another question? Yes, sir. None. None at all. Yep, anybody can call it. Okay, yes, sir. That I couldn't tell you. I typically use IE. I think there is a limitation for IE, yes. I do believe that is limited to, the 3D is limited to IE. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. If you're done with the conference, I hope you had a good conference, and travel safely heading back.